Chapter 76. I joined the U.S. Navy out of high school. I wanted to get out of town. See the world, kind of thing. From Kansas, this seemed like a good way. My mom was worried, but my dad was proud. The Navy needs more competent women, he said. You'll show them what for. I love my dad. So, I put in 8 years. Parts of those years were messy, mostly relationship stuff. I'm not going to go into that. Everyone is the same. We all fuck up until we get lucky if we do. Then, if you're smart enough to see your luck and act on it, things can work out. They have for me. But this is about the U.S. Navy. When I joined, I was paid about $25,000 a year. It doesn't sound like much, but I was also given free room and board and educated in a number of different jobs, so I was free to bank most of my salary if I wanted to, and I did. Eventually, it adds up. More on that later. The main thing I want to say is that being Navy was something I was proud of. This was not at all uncommon among my fellow sailors. We had good esprit de corps. I don't know if it's the same in the other branches of the military. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, although we often made fun of them for being stupid compared to us. Not unusual, I know. The thing is, the Navy is well run. I have the impression it's one of the more widely respected and well-run institutions anywhere. Among other things, we've run 83 nuclear-powered ships for 5,700 reactor years and 134 million miles of travel, all without nuclear accidents of any kind. I lived within a few feet of a nuclear reactor for 3 years. No harm, no foul. My dosimeter showed just the same as yours would. Maybe better.
How can that be?
Because the system was engineered and built for safety, whatever the cost. No cutting corners to make a buck. Done that way, it can work. Probably the Navy should run the country's electricity system. I'm just saying. A couple more things about Navy. Now that Pebble Mob missiles exist, none of our ships could survive an attack by hostiles who have such systems. It just wouldn't work. Nothing can stop those. You don't have to have gone to Annapolis to figure this out. The upper brass don't talk about it, no one talks about it because it would be too mind-boggling. Would you just throw in the towel? Say whoops, we are now like the cavalry or flint-tipped spears or a sharp rock in the hand. No, not right away, you wouldn't say that. So what it means is that the submarine fleet is all we've got in a real war. Since the threat from submarines is nuclear, as an atomic end-of-the-world kind of stuff, hopefully they won't ever be used. So in practical terms, until the subs rearm, maybe with Pebble Mobs of their own, I wouldn't doubt that that has even already happened. As a military force, the Navy has been taken completely off the table. All navies have. In any real war, the whole surface fleet would soon be on the bottom. Not a happy thought. But so think of the Navy in peaceful times, and given these Pebble Mobs, maybe peaceful times are what we've got now, very fucked up peaceful times, low-intensity asymmetric insurgency, terroristical climate refugee peaceful times. And in that kind of world, the surface fleet of the U.S. Navy can serve to deploy protective services and also emergency relief. Like the Swiss military over the last few centuries, its main function will be to bring disaster relief in coastal areas. A force for good, U.S. ambassador to the world kind of organization. You'll see, I'm not just making this up. If the Navy persists at all, it will be doing these kinds of things. It already has been for quite some time. Then, the last thing I want to say about the U.S. Navy is this. Occasionally our ships would get visited by admirals. Even destroyers and minesweepers get visited, like for inspections or courtesy tours or whatever. And as they wander around, they see a female able seaman. They sometimes stop to chat and ask questions. These were usually older men, once a woman. That was fun. They all started at Annapolis and made Navy their life, and no matter how fast they rose through the ranks, they've lived on ships and know the drill. So they're well informed and interested in how things are for sailors now. Curious and friendly, I'd say, and surprisingly normal. Like a captain, but less pretentious. Then later I looked it up and learned that admiral salaries top out at $200,000 a year. No one in the Navy gets paid more than that per year. So they call this the pay differential. It's sometimes expressed as a ratio from lowest pay to highest. That ratio for the Navy is about 1:8. For one of the most respected and well-run organizations on Earth. Sometimes this gets called wage parity or economic democracy, but let's just call it fairness, effectiveness, esprit de corps. 1:8. No wonder those admirals seemed so normal. They were. Whereas in the corporate world, I've read the average wage ratio is like 1 to 500. Actually, that was the median. 1 to 1,500 happens pretty often. The top executives in these companies earn in 10 minutes what it takes their starting employees all year to earn. Ponder that one for a while, fellow citizens. People talk about incentives, for instance. A word from business schools. Who is incentivized to do what in a wage ratio of 1 to 1,000? Those getting 1,000 times more than starting wage earners. What's their incentive from out of that situation? To hide, I'd say. To hide the fact that they don't actually do 1,000 times more than their employees. Hiding like that, they won't be normal. They'll be bullshitters. And for the lowest income folks, what's their incentive? I'm not coming up with one right off the bat, but the ones that do eventually come to mind sound cynical or beat down or completely delusional. Like, I hope I win the lottery, or I'm going to shoot up now, or the world is so fucked. You hear that kind of thing, right? Maybe incentive isn't the word here. Disincentive, to keep it in that lingo. When you get one pay amount and someone doing something easier gets 1,000 of that pay amount, that's a disincentive to care about anything. At that point you throw a rock through a window, or vote for some asshole who's going to break everything, which may give you a chance to start over, and if that doesn't work then at least you have said fuck you to the 1,000 getters. And so on. So, what if the whole world ran more like the US Navy? What if the standard, or even the legally mandated, maximum wage ratio was set at, say, 1 to 10, being so easy to calculate, with the lowest level set high enough for life adequacy or decency, or however you want to call it. Enough for a decent life, which then 10 times that. That's a lot. I mean, think about it. Count it on your fingers and thumbs, seeing the enough amount on the tip of each digit, all 10 stuck together at the end of your arms looking back at you. Enough times 10 is fucking luxurious. Works for the US Navy.
Oh yeah.
Chapter 77. Everyone knows me, but no one can tell me. No one knows me even though everyone has heard my name. Everyone talking together makes something that seems like me, but is not me. Everyone doing things in the world makes me. I am blood in the streets, the catastrophe you can never forget. I am the tide running under the world that no one sees or feels. I happen in the present but am told only in the future, and then they think they speak of the past, but really they are always speaking about the present. I do not exist, and yet I am everything. You know what I am? I am history. Now make me good. Chapter 78. He flew into Lucknow and got on the train into the city, and then took the subway and bus out to the branch of the city Montessori school that he had gone to as a child. Biggest school in the world. Winner of a UNESCO Peace Prize, it had been a turning point in his life for sure. His father having married a Nepali woman, he could have ended up in Nepal forever, in a wrong hill village, where the police station had been blown up by Maoists and never rebuilt. His father had been stubborn and had not wanted to expose his wife to the pressures of Lucknow. The second happiest city in India could be tough on hill folk. So, he could have lived his whole life in the Middle Ages, trapped by parents who had met through a young man's desperate matrimonial answered by a girl who could read and write and dream. But a German had passed through with an aid group, and when he got caught stealing from them, by no means the worst of his boyhood crimes, it was Fritz who sat him down and interrogated him, as stern as a policeman, but cheerful too, skeptical of his badness, unconvinced by his tough demeanor. Fritz said to him, firmly but kindly, to get anywhere in this world you must hitch your tiger to your chariot. No more stealing, that only hurts you. You're clever, and you have a burning desire. I can see that in you. So use your cleverness and get yourself a free ship to a school in a city. That way you'll get what you want without hurting people. Learn all you can in your school here, that won't be much of a challenge for you, I can see that. And then Fritz had spoken to his father, saying, send this boy to the city. Give him a chance. And his father had done it, and he had ended up in Lucknow, his father's hometown. The city amazed him. It stunned him. It was such an upgradation of his fortunes that he had not slept more than 3 hours a night for the rest of his childhood and youth, and all because of the violence of the spin of thoughts in his head, the day's inrush tumbling up there like clothes in a washer. Lucknow, now look. The place had made him. And now he was back. He wandered away from his old school, off into the tight, dense neighborhood south of it, the crush of old buildings caught between the subway line and the river, between the present and his past. He had done a lot of stupid things here. Despite the city's many exhilarations, he had not discontinued the truant ways of his Nepali childhood. He couldn't remember why. Chain snatching, market theft, maybe all that had been somehow a way to stay connected to home. His parents would have beaten him had they known what he did in the city, so senselessly endangering everything, but maybe the danger of it had been part of the allure. He liked doing it, and he liked the toughs he did it with.
He was one of them.
They reminded him of himself. He was a hill beast. No city could tame him. He took what he wanted, and no one could stop him. Only a close call entailing a broken arm had slowed him down. And then when he moved to Delhi, he had changed again, given up all that kind of thing. Again, he couldn't remember why he had done it, how he had justified it to himself.
It was just the way he had been then.
Things happened. Even though he had rarely slept in Lucknow, he had not really ever woken up until he moved to Delhi. At that point, many things came clear, and he never looked back. Now he was back. He wanted to look back. He walked across town to his school and spoke to the assembled students, and all the young faces were enough to slay him on the spot. Talk about burning desire. They wanted what he had, and he didn't know what to say to them. He said, "To get anywhere in this world, you must hitch your tiger to your chariot." He went out with them to the fields outside the city, where they were working in the India Regenerative Agriculture Job Guarantee Program. There was full employment in India now, and the work was hard, but it was scientifically based too, and drawing carbon into the soil year by year in ways making them all safer. He worked with them planting corn and then repairing a terrace wall, and ended the day feeling cooked. "I'm still a hill boy," he told them. "I can't hack the terai, it's too hot. But look you, this is good work you are doing, so you must persist." Gandhi made up this word, satyagraha. That's Sanskrit for peace force, you all know this word, right? But the Mahatma made it up himself, and I think he would be happy to imagine another word that puts the two parts in reverse order. Grahasesha. Force peace. It changes it from a noun to a verb, maybe, and you are exerting that force for peace. The work that you do here helps save the world. It forces peace on the world.
Keep at it.
Then, as he was preparing to leave, he got a note handed to him in the street requesting a meeting. And this was interesting enough to pursue. Indeed, he had wanted to speak to some of these people and had not been able to figure out a safe way to reach them. So he went to the address on the note. When he got there, he was startled and amused to find it was just one street away from the very intersection where he had spent much of his truant youth, the same X of alleyways meeting at a big plus sign of crossing avenues. A very messy intersection, as messy as his young mind and life had been, the same tram wires overhead, same narrow wrought iron balconies on the buildings. It gave him a little smile to think the people he was meeting, no doubt some of this generation's young toughs, had accidentally called him back to his old neighborhood. These were not the same kind of people he had been, however. They had a purpose. Their burning desire was already directed, hitched to a chariot outfitted for war. They stepped out of a doorway and gestured to him to follow them into an empty tea stall. They were older than he had been, and a woman led them. His childhood gang had been happy and boisterous. These people were angry and cautious. Of course. Lives were at stake, theirs included. And they had probably been in the heat wave. That would change you. Forged in the fire. Yes, these were children of Kali, staring at him as if calculating where to insert the knives. "We want you to stand up," the woman told him bluntly. "And I want you to stand down," he replied, as mildly as he could. She frowned heavily, as did the four men with her. They looked like the demon faces on Kali's necklace. "You don't tell us what to do," she said. "You're like Ferengi now." "I am not," he said. "You don't know what I am. You know enough to ask to meet with me. I'll give you that, but that's all you know. We see what's happening. We brought you here to tell you to do more. And I came when you asked to tell you the time has come to change tactics. That's a good thing, and it's partly because of what you did. You were doing the needful, I know that."
"We're still doing the needful," she said.
"It's a question of what's needful now," he said. "We will decide that," she said. He looked at each of them in turn. He felt how it could be more intimidating than anything one might say. It was almost like touching them, like an electric spark jumping the gap from mind to mind. A hard look, but he let them see him, too. "Listen," he told them. "I understand you. I've helped work like yours all over the world. That's why you asked me to meet with you. And it's why I agreed to meet with you. I am putting myself in your hands here to make you understand I am your ally. And to tell you that conditions have changed. Together we help to change them. So now, if you keep killing the wicked ones, the criminals, now that all the worst of them are dead, then you become one of them. The worst criminals are not dead. There are many more of them, she said fiercely. They always find replacements, he said. We do too.
I know that.
I know your sacrifice.
Do you?
He stared at her. Again, he shifted his stare one by one to the men with her. Faces to fear, faces to love. That burning desire. He said slowly, this is Lakshmi's city. I grew up here. I hope you know that. I grew up right here in this neighborhood, when it was far tougher than it is now. You weren't here in the heat wave, the woman said. He stared at her, feeling a strain inside him that might break him apart. His whole life was cracking inside him. Trying to control that, he unsteadily said, I've done more to stop the next heat wave than anyone you have ever met. You've done your part, I've done mine. I was working for this neighborhood long before the heat wave struck, and I'll keep doing that work for the rest of my life. May you live ever so long, one of the men said.
That's not the point, he said.
My point is, I see things you can't see from here, and I'm your ally, and I'm telling you, it's time to change. The big criminals are dead or in jail, or in hiding and rendered powerless. So now if you keep killing, it's just a kill. Even Kali didn't kill just to kill, and certainly no human should. Children of Kali should listen to their mother. We listen to her, but not you. He said, I am Kali. Suddenly, he felt the enormous weight of that, the truth of it. They stared at him and saw it crushing him. The war for the earth had lasted years. His hands were bloody to the elbows. For a moment he couldn't speak, and there was nothing more to say. Chapter 79. The time approached when Frank was to be released from prison.
Term served.
It was hard to grasp, he didn't know what to think of it. Years had passed, but he wasn't sure how. Part of him was still stuck outside himself, beyond life and its feelings. That was a relief in many ways, to be spared all the pain, the fear, the memories. Just cold sunlight on the corner terrace of a Zuri day. That he could spend 4 or 5 hours without a thought in his head. This was what the life here had given him. He didn't know if he wanted to give that up. Dissociation? Serenity? He didn't care what he called it. He wanted it. Because something else had gone away too. He wasn't afraid. As far as he could tell. And surely he would be able to tell, if it weren't the case. He was a creature of habit now. Eat, walk, work, read, sleep. He was neither happy nor unhappy.
He didn't want anything.
Well, that wasn't quite true. He wanted to be free of fear. And he was interested to see more animals. And he wanted the people in the refugee camps to be released like he was going to be. These were all different kinds of wants, and some of them he could try to pursue. Others were out of his power. Every morning, he either took the prison van or the city trams and buses to refugee centers and helped clean the kitchens, or he walked the downtown, crisscrossing the limb mat on its many bridges and often ending up at one of the lakefront parks. On this day, he went into Grossmünster to have a look around. Say hello to the spirit of Zurich, so gray and austere. Like a big old concrete warehouse, immensely tall and almost completely empty. That this was their place of worship always struck him funny. Zwingli as some kind of Zen monk, an advocate of nothingness. Purity of spirit. A devotional space reacting against the Baroque church, the very idea of church. Did it reveal as much about the Swiss as it seemed to? Wasn't the graceful Enlightenment church across the river a better image of what they were in modern times?
Possibly so.
He walked out, recrossed the river, past the Goethe slept here sign, went into Peterskirch. No, this wasn't it either. Smooth, tasteful, kitschy, alabaster. The Swiss weren't like that now. Bauhaus had struck them harder than anyone. They were all about design now, leapfrogging back towards Zwingli, or forward to some space-age clean line. Function as form, yes, that was Swiss style. Do it right, make it last. Clean, sober, elegant, stylish. The old-fashioned Heidi gestures banished to the touristic parts of the Alps where they belonged. Here in Zurich it was all about function. He passed by the women's club set right out over the limb mat, where bathers lay in the sun. Across the river stood the Odeon, looking at the sunbathing women like prurient Joyce himself. Then to the bridge at the river outlet, Quaybrook, the beginning of the limb mat. West along the lake to the first lakeshore park. Sit at a bench above the tiny marina and watch the statue of Ganymede hold his arms out to the big bird before him. A simple gesture, enigmatic to the point of blankness. His kind of statue. Ganymede's Tata, that was frank, maybe, going forward. Offering something to a great eagle. The sight gave him a shiver. In the sun, wan though it was, he shouldn't have been cold, but he was. Then he felt a slight wave of nausea, and a cold sweat burst out all over him at once. He sat there, willing the sensation to leave him. To his relief it did. But now his clothes were damp, and he sat there feeling weak and cold. This had happened a few times recently. He hadn't told anyone, had brushed it off. Somehow out here, in the pale sunlight, it felt worse. He stood up, caught at the bench arm unsteadily. Walked down the broad steps to where the lake lapped against the concrete abutment. The sight reminded him of something he couldn't afford to recall. He knew what it was, but he ignored it in order to plunge his hands into the water. Cold alpine water, clean and fresh. You could drink right out of the lake, Mary Murphy had told him. She swam in it and knew. He scooped a handful and lifted it to his mouth, sucked it down.
Cool and bland, a little organic.
He could taste that it had been snow a week before. He sucked down several handfuls, ignoring a couple of passers-by who thought it was strange of him to be drinking from the lake. It was James Joyce who had said you could eat your breakfast off the Zurich streets. Now you could certainly drink their lake water. He had swum in it once or twice, he recalled now. It had been years. Jake in the lake. Strange it was so long ago. He took a deep breath. Something wrong there, some light-headed chilled weakness he couldn't identify, couldn't put a word to. People said it was a shock to be released, that the days stretched out forever in the weeks before it happened, that you went crazy, that you got afraid of the freedom, wanted back inside. None of that was right when it came to him. It was not any of his old familiar reactions, which he had been told were mental states manifesting in his body. Post-traumatic stress disorder, yes, but this phrase always hid more than it revealed. What was the trauma? What was the stress? What was the disorder? No one knew. In the jungle of each mind, a wandering went on ceaselessly, finding a clearing here, a pool there, all in the murky light of one's sputtering thoughts, half awake, half asleep. Why the helpers tried to put words to it he didn't know. Well, they were trying to help. People were wordy creatures. They felt their feelings as words. Sometimes. But sometimes it didn't work. No words fit. A shaft of fear cut through him like a blade. Something was wrong. He took the steps up from the lake carefully, looking down to make sure his feet were set right. Not a place to stumble. There were too many searchers out for a walk, and if he fell, and they helped him and saw his ankle monitor, they would think he was on drugs. No, he had to maintain. He got up to street level, breathed deeply. He took stock, shook his limbs, felt them move as he expected them to, took heart. Across the busy street and into the little side streets between Bahnhofstrasse and the river. Up here was a candy shop that sold wedges of candied orange half-dipped in various types of chocolate. He liked the darkest chocolate. Best possible wedges of orange, bittersweet, not quite dried, half-coated with the best possible chocolates. He had made a habit of dropping by and buying just one, to nibble on while he walked. He went in now, and the saleswoman recognized him, plucked out a wedge with tongs, and put it on a sheet of waxed paper without him having to ask. A nod from him was enough. Then back out into the narrow pedestrian streets, smooth flattened pavers almost like cobblestones but not, back toward Paradeplatz, across the tram tracks running down Bahnhofstrasse, and up into the neighborhood around the prison so well known to him. Orange and chocolate, chocolate and orange. Bitter and sweet, dark and light. The complementary tastes forming a composite taste of its own, full and chewy. An infusion of sugars flowing into him, some fat, probably a little jolt of caffeine too. He turned the corner and saw the Gefängnis and felt better. He would shake off this malaise, await his release as stoically as he had endured it, get out, and take an apartment in the neighborhood. There was a co-op apartment nearby, overlooking the bus garage, that he had been on the waiting list for since the beginning of his sentence. Now a little bedroom in it was available. He would take that and keep living just as he was now. Keep his head down and get through the days just as he had been. Mary Murphy didn't come by for a while, until he began to wonder. Then when she did, he joined her at the table across the street and told her about seeing the chamois under Pilatus. He couldn't tell it right. He could see she wasn't getting it. "You should go up there and see for yourself," he said, finally irritated.
"I'm glad you went," was all she said.
"It sounds good." Then he asked her about her refugee division and what they were doing. He said to her, "There's something like 140 million of them now, and growing all the time. That's like the entire population of France and Germany combined. It's as bad as it's ever been."
"I know."
"You have to work up a plan all the governments will agree to," he told her. "Have you looked at what happened at end of the World Wars? There were millions of refugees wandering around starving. They put Fridtjof Nansen in charge of the problem after World War I, and he came up with a system they called Nansen passports, which gave refugees the right to go wherever they wanted to, free passage anywhere." "Is that true?"
she asked.
"I think so. I've been reading around, not very systematically, but you've got a team to throw at this. There should be Nansen passports again." She sighed. "There's a lot of countries won't accept such a thing, I'm afraid. Do like you did with the central banks. It's a plan or chaos. The camps, I know you visited them, but what I see there is that it's like this jail here, but worse, because they don't have any sense of how long they'll be held, and they never did anything in the first place. Europe is just punishing the victims. Sudan takes care of more refugees than all of Europe, and Sudan is a wreck. People come to Europe and they get called economic migrants, as if that wasn't just what their own citizens are supposed to do, try to make a better life, show some initiative. But if you come to Europe to do it, you're criminalized. You've got to change that." She shook her head. "It isn't just Europe." "But you're in Europe," Frank said. He stared at her. She was looking at her coffee furtig. They were falling back again into the pattern of their first night, probably not a good idea. He hectoring her to do more, her resenting that. On the other hand, here she was so many years later. It was strange. He didn't know what to make of it. But suddenly he realized it was important to him. He wanted her to visit. That represented something he couldn't name. But he needed it, whatever it was. This Irish woman was kind of crazy, kind of ominously interested in him, really, and quite often a bit vengeful and harsh, pushing him around in ways that bothered him, very irritating, but he had gotten used to her visiting. He needed her. "You should go to the Alps," he said. "Remember you told me that, and you were right. Now I'm telling you the same thing." She nodded. "Maybe so." Chapter 80.
"I've had to push him every step of the way.
He's just like one of his oxen. That's why he likes them so much. Also why he doesn't like me. I'm like one of the birds standing on the oxen poking them in the back. He'd be so much happier if I were an ox. Instead, I'm his wife, and it's a stupid fate, but I have no one to blame but myself, and truthfully, I love him, but I don't want to starve for that." So he inherited the butt end of his father's property, 2 hectares as far from the river as his family's land got, which meant it had been used as a dump for many years, and first we had to dig through a thick layer of various kinds of crap, even pay to get some of the worst of it carted off, at which point we had a triangle of dirt hard as a marble floor. First job was breaking up the hardpan surface. Second was getting an irrigation channel cut over to us from the cousin's property upstream. I drove him to drive his brothers and nephews to help us, and eventually that all got done, and it was time to amend the soil. Here his stupid oxen were of some help, as we could rent nearby pasturage for them and collect their manure and turf it into our land. Of course, the water from the ditch just ran over our property at first, carrying everything loose to the river, so we had to deal with that berm, terrace, channelize, polder, whatever. I did most of that, being the only one who could work an hour straight, also read a level. Progress was slow. Then we heard the rumors that the district council would be giving out money for carbon retention. Given the state of our property, this would be getting paid for what we had to do anyway to keep from starving, so I told the ox to get registered right away. He dithered and mooed as always. "Why waste my time?" he complained. "Those things never work."
"Quit it," I said.
"Get down there now or I'll divorce you and tell everyone why." He went and got us registered. That meant a team that came through the village dropped by our place for about an hour and took samples to get a benchmark figure. One of them was looking around at our place with an expression that made it clear we were obviously going to be setting a good low benchmark. Our daughter was pestering him as he worked, and he took some of our soil and put it in a glass of water, swirled the water, then stopped and showed her how at the moment he stopped moving the glass, the water in it cleared almost immediately. All the grit and mud floating around sank to the bottom. You need to add compost, he told her. Organic material will float in water, but you can see you don't have much of that. A good starting point. We might as well have been living on a linoleum floor or a rock. After that I pushed every day. Doing no-till agriculture is all very well, but first you need soil to not till. That takes first doing some serious turning over and plowing under, I'll tell you. Years of backbreaking work, in our case, and always pinched for cash, as we used everything I could afford to set aside to pay for various neighbors' manure and crop waste. But shit to gold, as they say. We did all that. I drove him and he drove his workers, and we got some trees and perennials planted and left them alone, and during the harvests we harvested their usufruct with gratitude. We suffered a drought and a flood, but saw our land do a little better through those catastrophes than some of our neighbors' properties did, because of what we were doing. And it was all without any tractors or fertilizers or pesticides, just the good old poisons that had always been there. All the right kinds of old ways, and all documented by me, as these were going to be factors in the eventual carbon reckoning. We grew most of what we ate, we grew some things to sell, and we put all we earned back into the land. My ox grumbled. Whoever heard of growing a crop of dirt? Finally came a time when the team from the district office was coming through again to check carbon levels. The moment I heard, I went down to the district office to sign up for it. Soon after that, the day came when the team, a different one of course, visited to make its evaluation of our little farm's soil. They wandered the property taking samples, sometimes digging with a tool like a post-hole digger, other times with a pole like a long corkscrew. Samples, then evaluations over at their truck, which held in its back some big metal machines. When they were done with their evaluation, they came over to us. You've done well, they told us. We're authorized to pay you right now, but first you have to know, we subtract an 11% fee out of your payout, to pay for our expenses and also your taxes. So if you'll sign here to agree to that, we'll get it done. My big ox bristled. I've never heard of any such cut, he said. What's ours is ours. Just pay us what we're owed. We'll deal with the rest of it ourselves. The one talking sighed and looked at his colleagues. I can't do that, the procedure is set. You have to sign to get your part. I won't do it, my husband declared. Let's go have it out at the district. No, I said. I dragged him off to confer in private. I didn't want to embarrass him too much in front of these strangers. Around the corner of the house, I wagged my finger under his nose. You take the deal, or I'll divorce you, I told him. We've worked too hard. People like this always take a cut. We're lucky it's only 11%. They could have said 50%, and we'd still have to take it. Don't be an idiot or I'll divorce you, and then I'll kill you, and then I'll tell everyone why. The ox thought it over and went back to the visitors. All right, he said, my wife insists, and she can be very insistent. The men nodded. We signed their form, then looked at what they had given us. 23? My man asked. That's nothing. 23 carbon coins, they said. Actually, 23.28. 1 coin per ton of carbon captured, which means, in your currency, if that's how you want to take it, about. He tapped on his wrist pad. At the current exchange rate, it comes to about 70,000. 71,680. My ox and I looked at each other. That was more than we spent per year on everything by a long shot. Almost 2 years of expenses, in fact. Is that before or after the 11% is taken out? My ox inquired. I had to laugh. My husband is funny. Chapter 81. Transcript Mary S/Tatiana V. Phone conversation, secure line. M in office. T in safe house, location undisclosed. How are you doing?
T. Bored. How about you?
Shouldn't you be in hiding too? I don't think anyone wants to kill me. It wouldn't change anything. T maybe. So what are you doing? T. Working. Telecommuting like this. Advising our legal efforts. Anything interesting? T. Well, I think some parts are working. What do you mean? T. I think the bet that the super rich will take a buyout is turning out to be correct. For most of them, anyway. How can you tell? We've been trying it. Offer them 50 million they can count on, or endless prosecution and harassment, even a situation like mine, to stay safe. Many of them are taking the deal. This is legal? It sounds like extortion. There are legal forms for it. I'm just speaking plainly for your sake. Thanks. So they don't just shift their money into tax havens? We've killed those. That's maybe the best thing about blockchain for fiat money. We know where it is. There aren't any hiding places left. If you do manage to hide it, it isn't really money anymore. Only money on the books has any real value now. The older stuff is like, I don't know, doubloons. Real money, we know where it is, and where it came from. Wasn't that always true? No. Remember cash? I still use it, but it was numbered, right?
Sure.
But once it got moved around a couple of times, it was just cash. There were lots of ways to launder it, and it couldn't be traced. Now it can be traced. In fact, it has to be to stay real. So there's no place to hide. There are no tax havens. We blockaded the last ones, got the WTO to declare them a disqualifier, all that.
No.
For individuals, if you want to stay rich in the current moneyscape, it's best to take the haircut and accept your 50 million and walk. I guess it makes sense. Yes. 50 million in the hand is worth $1 billion in the bush. Maybe it's the rich who are most like Homo economicus was supposed to be. They have all the information. They pursue rational self-interest. They try to maximize their wealth. But if a maximum level of wealth gets mandated by society, fighting that isn't rational, especially if you've got something like 20 times as much as you need to be secure. I don't know about that. The kind of ambition that gets you $1 billion won't be brooked. It's a sociopathic thing. There's nothing rational about it. It's a man thing most of the time. Although I've met women who feel just as entitled. Of course. So they'll lash out. Some of them, sure. You're always going to have crazy people. It's the system I'm talking about. If crazy people lash out in a sane system, they do some damage but then they end up in jail, or someone kills them. So it's the system that matters. And that's where I'm seeing results. Is the Russian government on board with all this?
Hard to say.
Maybe so. Soviet nostalgia is getting stronger. And Siberia is melting, which turns out to be no joke. Some people thought it would be a good thing, that we would grow more wheat and so on, but turns out we just get a bunch of swamps, and you can't drive on the frozen rivers like they used to. It's a mess. Also, it's releasing so much methane and CO2 that we might make Jungle Planet. Nobody in Russia wants Jungle Planet. It's too messy, it's not Russian. So ideas there are changing. So they're coming around. Maybe so. It's still a battle inside the Kremlin, but the evidence is clear. And that Soviet regard for science still holds for a lot of Russians. It's a Russian value too. And they think it's funny that the Soviet way might save the world. It's a kind of indication. Every culture wants respect from all the rest. Of course. Now the Chinese have it and India too. The ones still hungry for it are Russia and Islam. So how do you get that respect? Not by money. The Saudis showed that. They were fools. Obvious fools get no respect. In Russia we worry about that. We think we are always seen as fools. The Great Bear. Dangerous and uncouth.
Provincial.
Best novels in the world. Best music in the world? That was all Tsar stuff. Then the Soviet Union, it had some respect for standing up to the Americans and getting out there in the sciences and standing for solidarity. Or so it gets remembered. Now, we are just the great losers to the Americans. And with the whole world speaking English, that impression can never go away. Not unless we use Soviet methods to save everyone from American stupidity. Or go back to the Tsar. Yes, that's the bad response. We saw that with Putin. But the Soviet dream is better. We assume our past. Use it to save the world. Mother Russia saves the day. I hope so. Someone's got to do it. I don't think America will. America. They are the rich person who has to accept owning just 50 million rather than infinity. They'll be the last ones to come around. I guess I should go to San Francisco again. Chapter 82. Stores are bottlenecks, being distribution centers, and not that numerous. You kick them in the balls when you attack their distribution centers. Their stock price drops at news of such attacks, and they have no way to counter that. And their valuations are already at historic lows. Of course, police might arrest and prosecute, but that doesn't bring the share price back up. $100,000 of physical damage can leverage $100 million in lost asset value. Big pension funds notice there's a problem and move their monster assets elsewhere. Then endowments and trusts and universities and nonprofits and hedge funds all notice the big dogs moving, and they try to get out of the house before it falls on their head. And suddenly, a big famous corporation, which is also of course a legal person, has suffered something like a stroke and is now lying there paralyzed in a hospital bed on life support, his heirs arguing over who gets the last of his stuff. So stores were torched, sure. In the past, that would have been the end of it. People like direct action because it's quick, and afterwards you don't have to face any real change. But around this time, the householders' union backed the student debt resistance in support of its payment strike. That was non-compliance in action, meaning stay at home for almost every job. It's a form of general strike. Then on July 16th, big parts of the internet, the online store of stores, stopped working. That felt freaky. And we had done it. Was it smart? Wasn't the internet like our nervous system now? It was like that guy who cut his arm off to get out of a canyon in Utah. A very desperate measure. We had cast ourselves out into an interregnum, the chaos between dynasties. The crisis, year zero. Oh my fucking god. In a situation like this, there has to be a plan. You can't make it up on the fly in the middle of the breakdown. Not in the modern era of hypercomplexity. Say the internet stops working. Your savings suddenly vanish and money doesn't work anymore. Jesus H. Christ in a bucket. Can you make up a new society from scratch at that point? No, you can't. Things just fall apart, and next thing you know you're eating your cat. So take this in, there has to be a pre-existing plan B. And it can't be a secret plan, popped on the world in the time of chaos. No conspiracy theories, please, so fucking tedious those people, as if things secretly made sense.
No.
Obvious bullshit. We're winging it here. Not that there aren't conspiracies, it's just that they're all well known. So it's in that spirit that Plan B has to be a known plan, an open conspiracy known to all in advance, like the shadow government of an opposition party, putting out all its plans for citizens to consider and hopefully vote for. All of the proposals on the table and argued for. Step-by-step assembly instructions. Yes, this sounds like politics, because it is. Very depressing. A canonical example of how much the lack of a plan B can hamstring a revolution is, well, pick any revolution you've ever heard of. They're almost always spasms, and so you get the usual spastic result, history as fuck up, as pinball machine, as nightmare. But consider this one example, which is actually an example of how the lack of a plan B can stop a revolution from even starting in the first place, despite the crying need for one. So it's especially relevant for us now, meaning Greece and the failure to Grexit back in the early years of the century. Greece had fallen into arrears in paying its debts to the European Union Central Bank, also the World Bank, and a raft of private bank creditors. These global financial powers then put the screws on. They told Greece to quit giving its citizens pensions and health care and so on, so the Greek government would be able to afford to pay back the international lenders who had so foolishly extended credit to such a bad risk. Syriza, the party in power in Greece at the time, refused to do this. The so-called Troika, representing international finance, insisted they do it. They couldn't give in on this one, or all the little pigs would run off, meaning Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. So who's going to lose here, the Greek population or international finance? Syriza put the question to its people in the form of a poll. The Greek people voted by a large majority to defy the Troika and refuse austerity. Syriza then promptly accepted austerity and the EU's leash, going belly up and begging for a bailout. Why did Syriza do that? Why did they betray the wishes of the people who elected them? Because they had no plan B. What they needed at that moment was a plan that would get them out of the EU and back to the drachma. They would have needed IOUs of some sort to stand in and do the job of money, while they printed new drachmas and made all the other necessary changes as they transitioned back to a country in control of its own currency and sovereignty. And in fact, there were people in Syriza working furiously to design that Plan B, which they called Plan X, but this turned out to be a case of too little too late, as they couldn't convince their colleagues in government to risk trying it. So, in the absence of such a plan ready to be enacted, Syriza had to cave to the EU and global finance. It was that or chaos, which could have meant starvation. People in Greece were already hungry as it was. Unemployment was 25%, 50% for the young, and the austerity regime already imposed earlier by the Troika meant there was no money for basic social services, for relief. The government of an advanced nation, a European nation, the cradle of civilization, blah blah blah, was reduced to choosing hunger and unemployment rather than starvation and chaos. Those were their only choices because they hadn't made a plan B. This time, our time, when the whole thing broke all over the world, there had to be a plan B. What was it? Big parts of it have been there all along. It's called socialism. Or, for those who freak out at that word, like Americans or international capitalist success stories reacting allergically to that word, call it public utility districts. They are almost the same thing. Public ownership of the necessities, so that these are provided as human rights and as public goods, in a not-for-profit way. The necessities are food, water, shelter, clothing, electricity, health care, and education. All these are human rights. All are public goods. All are never to be subjected to appropriation, exploitation, and profit. It's as simple as that. Democracy is also good, but again, for those who think this word is just a cover story for oligarchy and Western imperialism, let's call it real political representation. Do you feel you have real political representation? Probably not, but even if you feel you have some, it's probably feeling pretty compromised at best. So, public ownership of the necessities and real political representation. Details can be arranged on a case-by-case basis, and even though the devil is in the details, they are still details, a matter of making the pieces of the puzzle fit. These details can be worked out, and often they already have been. The Zurich Plan, the Mondragon System, Albert and Hahnel's Participatory Economics, Communism, the Public Trust Plan, the What's Good is What's Good for the Land Plan, the various post-capitalisms, and so on and so forth. There are lots of versions of a Plan B, but they all share basic features. It's not rocket science. The necessities are not for sale and not for profit. One scary thing, there has to still be money, or at least some exchange or allocation system that people trust, which means the already existing central banks have to be part of it, which means the current nation-state system has to be part of it. Sorry, but it's true, and maybe obvious. Even if you are a degrowth devolutionist, an anarchist, or a communist, or a fan of world government, we only do the global in the current world order by way of the nation-state system. Or call it by way of the family of languages, if it makes you feel better. Hundreds of different languages have to be mutually comprehensible. It is what we've got now, and in the crux, when things fall apart, something from the old system has to be used to hang the new system on, hopefully something big and solid. Without that, it's castles and air time, and all will collapse into chaos. So yes, money, meaning central banks, meaning the nation-state system. It's a social agreement, nothing more. This is what makes it so creepy. It's like being hypnotized. You have to agree to it for it to work. So we are all hypnotized in a giant dream we hallucinate together, and that's social reality. Not a happy thought. Especially since the current order is so unequal, so unfair. Old story, of course. Biblical, detailed in Genesis. It's the oldest story, inequality, and never much changed from the start of civilization. So how can we change that?
What do we do now?
Now everyone knows everything. No one on the planet is ignorant of the real conditions of our shared social existence. That's one real thing those stupid smartphones have done. You can be illiterate, many are, and still have an excellent idea of how the world works. You know the world is spinning toward catastrophe. You know it's time to act. Everyone knows everything. The invisible hand never picks up the check. The money is already here, it just isn't evenly distributed. Which is to say, properly distributed. So now things have broken. We broke them. We broke them on purpose. Riot, occupation, non-compliance, general strike, breakdown. Now it's time for Plan B, time to act, as in Act of Parliament. It will be legislation that does it in the end, creating a new legal regime that is fair, just, sustainable, and secure. Public utility districts, state-owned, meaning citizen-owned, enterprises, cooperative enterprises, real political representation, and so on. We have to enact a Plan B as law, as soon as possible. The best Plan B will emerge from the multitudes. Chapter 83. Back in Pita, in the season of white nights, midnight, and yet still not dark, on this night a dim, eerie gray light, the seaside city under low clouds, as so often. On the Trinity Bridge, looking inland at the great wall of the Peter and Paul Fortress in its spotlights, glowing yellow in the dusk. Raw cold, as usual. She had her old coat on, its fur collar warm under her chin, her winter cap down over her ears, long underwear under her pants, her old line boots. She was okay, she had come prepared, though it was always a shock to get back into such a raw cold. "Ah, Tatiana," her friend said from behind her, "you were such a beauty before you left, and now you're just another babushka like the rest of us."
"Fuck you," she said.
"You look even worse." They hugged. "Actually, you are looking pretty fucking good," Svetlana said, inspecting her as they held hands. "I guess all that money in Switzerland has been good for you. Spas and diets and workouts, it looks like."
"Not."
"Well, you've always been lucky to have a figure like yours. You can pack it on and still look good, just more gush. Lots of Swiss cheese." Tatiana agreed unhappily. "But quit being stupid, tell me what you want." "I want out." Tatiana sucked in on the cold air. "Are you sure?" Svetlana gestured at the city. "Who wouldn't? I thought it was looking pretty." Svetlana gestured at the Loftus Center Tower, puncturing the white night like a giant silver needle. "Are you kidding me? I kind of like it." "You would."
"Come on, though."
"It isn't a case of how it looks, or how you look, or how you felt about it when you were a girl. I hated it when I was a girl. It's now I like it. Now that you're gone. I'll be back someday." "I doubt it. Don't kid yourself. This place would kill you." "I thought things were getting better." "Putin's gone. The communists are making a comeback. The oligarchs are dead or in jail."
"Don't say that."
"Why do you say that?" "The first generation is gone, but their children are thugs, you know that. We'll never be rid of them. But they don't care about political power. They're all in Monaco or New York, right?" "Not all. Some, but not all. And while there's still a rum party around to wreak havoc, it's not over. Not even close. The democracy movement has the momentum. Democratic communism, you have to love it. We'll end up the reverse of the Chinese. They became dictator capitalists. We'll become democratic communists. In Zurich, you can maybe believe that. Here it's not so simple. You have to admit it's getting better. Better, yes. Because there was so much room for getting better. But the more we win, the more resistance there is. The better we do, the more dangerous it gets for us. Do you understand that?" "I do." "So, think about it. You've been having some success, and we have too. And so the danger rises. I want to work from the outside now, like you. Do you think it matters where you are?" "I do. This bridge has the highest murder rate of any bridge in the world. And so you picked it as our meeting place?" "I wanted to remind you. I wanted you to feel it." Tatiana heaved in a cold breath, feeling depressed. Mother Russia, the unhappy bear. "Not a surprise, really," she said. "Is there something I can do from Zurich?" "Of course. Get me out. Beyond that?" "Yes, of course. The new prosecutor general is on our side, at least to the extent of wanting better land protection. He's some kind of animal lover. I think with his help we can get the Council of Judges to approve Yevgeny's slate of reforms." "Do the judges matter?" "More than they used to. Makarov is trying to be the anti-Putin, don't you see? Since no one could out-Putin Putin, he's trying the opposite." Tatiana said, "Are you sure no one could out-Putin Putin?" Svetlana gestured at the city. "Maybe Peter the Great. Or Stalin."
"No."
"That whole line is done. And no one wants to be a second-rate version of the guy who came before. So to make his mark, Makarov's trying to be the opposite. The great reformer, the globalist, the Democrat. Tilt more to India than China. Which means more rule of law, which a lot of people definitely want. And so we have our chance. Even Yevgeny's program?"
"Yes."
"Including legal standing for animals, which is just what you need to forward some of your cases here." With legal standing, you can go crazy in your usual style. I like that, Tatiana said, feeling buoyed at the thought. I want to sue some people here real bad. Help me, and I'll help you. As always. So let's get off this fucking bridge and go find a drink. As always. Time for kiryat. Time for kvasit. We will anoint ourselves with 100 grams. Or 200.
No wonder you're getting fat.
Alcohol has calories, you know.
Good.
I'm hungry too. I'm cold and I'm hungry and I need a drink. Welcome home. Chapter 84. After several years of container ships being sunk on a regular basis, taken out by drone torpedoes of ever-increasing speed and power, the shipping industry had finally begun adapting to the new situation. It was adapt or die. There were only about 11,000 container ships afloat, only 200 of them in the very large class, and after 40 of those were sunk, the verdict was clear, the writing on the wall. They weren't going to be able to stop the saboteurs, who still remained unidentified. Maersk and MSC, a Swiss company, both began to rebuild their fleets, and all the big shipyards followed.
It was that or die.
That one of the biggest shipping companies on Earth was a Swiss company says something about the Swiss, and the world too. An ordinary container ship was massive but simple. They were very seaworthy, being so big and stable that even when caught in cyclones and hurricanes they could ride them out, as long as their hulls kept their integrity and their engines kept running. And, of course, their capacity for cargo was immense. They were well suited to their task. So the first attempts at transitioning to ships the saboteurs wouldn't sink involved altering the ones that already existed. Electric motors replaced diesel engines to spin the props, and these motors were powered by solar panels, mounted as giant roofs over the top of the cargo. This could work, though the speed of the behemoths was much reduced, there being not enough room on them for the number of solar panels needed to power higher speeds. But if the supply chain of commodities was kept constant, in terms of arrivals at destination ports, these reductions in ship speed, and thus in economic efficiency, were just part of the new cost of doing business. Just in time. But which time? Because they were slow. Fairly quickly there emerged specialized shipyards devoted to taking in container ships and cutting them up, each providing the raw material for 5 or 10 or 20 smaller ships, all of which were propelled by clean power in ways that made them as fast as the diesel burners had been, or even faster. These changes included going back to sail. Turned out it was a really good clean tech. The current favored model for new ships looked somewhat like the big 5-masted sailing ships that had briefly existed before steamships took over the seas. The new versions had sails made of photovoltaic fabrics that captured both wind and light, and the solar-generated electricity created by them transferred down the masts to motors that turned propellers. Clipper ships were back, in other words, and bigger and faster than ever. Mary took a train to Lisbon and got on one of these new ships. The sails were not in the square-rigged style of the tall ships of yore, but rather schooner-rigged, each of the 6 masts supporting one big squarish sail that unfurled from out of its mast, with another triangular sail above that. There was also a set of jibs at the bow. The ship carrying Mary, the cutting Snark, was 250 feet long, and when it got going fast enough and the ocean was calm, a set of hydrofoils deployed from its sides, and the ship then lifted up out of the water a bit and hydrofoiled along at even greater speed. They sailed southwest far enough to catch the trades south of the horse latitudes, and in that age-old pattern came to the Americas by way of the Antilles and then up the great chain of islands to Florida. The passage took 8 days. The whole experience struck Mary as marvelous. She had thought she would get seasick. She didn't. She had a cabin of her own, tiny, ship-shape, with a comfortable bed. Every morning she woke at dawn and got breakfast and coffee in the galley, then took her coffee out to a deck chair in the shade, and worked on her screen. Sometimes she talked to colleagues elsewhere in the world, sometimes she typed. When she talked to people on screen, they sometimes saw the wind scatter her hair, and were surprised to learn she wasn't in her office in Zurich. Other than that, it was a work morning like any other, taking breaks to walk around the main deck a few times and look at the blue sea. She stopped work for birds planing by, and dolphins leaping to keep up. The other passengers aboard had their own work and friends, and left her alone, although if she sat at one of the big round tables to eat, there were always people happy to talk. Her bodyguards left her alone. They too were enjoying the passage. If she wanted, she could eat at a small table and read. She would look up and observe the faces talking around her for a minute or two, then go back to her book. Back out on deck. The air was salty and cool, the clouds tall and articulated, the sunsets big and gorgeous. The stars at night, fat and numerous, the salty air more than compensated for by the truly dark skies. Then the new moon fattened, night by night, until it threw a bouncing silver path out to the twilight horizon, sky over water, indigo on cobalt, split by a silver road. It was beautiful, and she was getting her work done. So, where had this obsession with speed come from? Why had everyone caved to it so completely? Because people did what everyone else did. Because first no one could fly, then everyone could fly, if they could afford it, and flying was sublime. But also now a crowded bus ride, a hassle. And now, on most of the planes Mary flew on, people closed their window shutters and flew as if in a subway car, never looking down at all, incurious about the planet floating 10 kilometers below. On the 8th day her ship sailed into New York Harbor, a dream of a harbor, Cosmopolis itself, and she debarked on a Hudson dock and took a cab to Penn Station and got on a train headed west. Okay, this was less interesting. But still she could work, sleep, look out the window. And the Americans had finally gotten some high-speed rail built, including this cross-continent line, so it was only another day, and then she was in San Francisco, coming out of the ground and walking over to the big tower and taking an elevator up to the top, where she had met with the central bankers years before. Her trip had taken 9 days, and she had worked every day as if home in Zurich, except that she got more done. And the carbon burn, as calculated by Bob Wharton's own personalized calculator, had been the same as it would have been if she had stayed at home. And the ocean crossing had been beautiful. She had sailed across the Atlantic, and now stood before a picture window in the big tower, looking across a huge wedge of the Pacific. Amazing! We've been so stupid, she said to Jane Yablonsky, still chair of the Federal Reserve. She had been reappointed by a new president who had been terrified by all the changes. Yablonsky looked mystified as she tried to parse which stupidity Mary might be referring to. Mary did not elucidate. Not immediately, anyway. She needed to hear how they thought things were going first. The group talked over events they often named the heat wave, crash day, the little depression, the transition, the intervention, the strange times, the super depression, and she saw it again. These were the rulers of the world, if indeed anyone could be called that. Maybe not. Maybe that was the change they were trying to catch with all their glib names. The system as such had escaped them. Change itself was changing. Still, they undoubtedly held a lot of whatever power remained. No doubt about that. Because money mattered. Now, they were gathered to discuss the first years of their big experiment, what Bob Wharton called their Hail Mary, the carbon coin. It was very like meetings convened to discuss the Indians' Pinatubo interventions, climatologists in those meetings, bankers in this one. Here, too, they had made an experimental casting into the air, in this case of gold dust. What had happened? They listened to their assistants give reports on that for a couple of hours. Abstract after abstract, information crushed to crystalline density. Then it was back to them, looking at each other around the big table. Time for reckoning. Had it done what they hoped it would? Had it worked? Yes, and no, and maybe. The usual answer to any question these days. But in many senses, yes, it had worked. This was what Mary heard them saying to each other, cautiously and indirectly. Around this table set so high above the beautiful city, looking at each other, she saw that their faces were pleased, even when expressing nervous concern. They agreed on these points. The new carbon coin had stimulated many short-term investments in carbon sequestration projects and many longer-term investments in the coin itself. It had caused some of the biggest carbon owners to cash out and keep fossil carbon in the ground, or use it for plastics if they could. Coal had become just a black rock you could turn into money by leaving it alone. They had created and paid out trillions of carbon coins, and yet had seen no signs of inflation or deflation. For those who held that theory, no noticeable price change. There were currency exchanges where they had seen efforts to manipulate the value of the carbon coin against the values of other currencies, including people trying to drive it down in value, in hopes of buying low and selling high later on. Combating those efforts, if they needed to do that, had been best accomplished by attacking the manipulators in ways that would cause them to desist, while also warning others away from such actions. Tools existed to strongly sanction those who tried it. One report on this had used the phrase financial decapitation. As part of altering the investment climate further, their staffs had written up draft legislation to propose to their governments several related reforms, including strong currency controls, attacking and eliminating tax havens, shifting all money from cash to digital forms tracked by blockchain technologies, and mounting the pressure on carbon by way of increased taxation and regulation. A lot of momentum on those fronts now. This all sounds good, Mary said at the end of the day. So now, what else can you do? They regarded her. You tell us, they said. What kind of thing did you have in mind?
And why?
Mary sighed. They were never going to be the source of change. It just wasn't in their DNA, either institutionally or individually. She ran down a list that Dick and Janice Athena had made for her. Outlawing dark pools and killing them off. Putting significant delays in high-frequency trading. Creating high-frequency trading taxes big enough to get trading back to human speed. Calculating basic necessities needed and providing these gratis to underserved communities. Oh, dear oh my. Not what central banks do. Their first response, as always. But they had already strayed far out of their lane, as one of them put it. More like a bull over the pasture fence, she thought. A herd of big bulls off into the wild, looking around, didn't see any more fences. This then so scary a sight that at first they tried to conjure back some fences, enclosure being so much more comfy than freedom. Of course, trust in money must be protected, as their prime directive, and that directive itself was a fence. Hooray! But wouldn't killing the dark pools create more trust in money? Mary inquired. Rather than less? They had to agree. And in general, less autonomy for loose money might increase trust in fiat money generally. And high-frequency trading, Mary asked, wasn't it simply rent, parasiting on productive exchanges? She found it funny to be speaking of rent, as if it weren't the fundamental action of the economic system these people upheld, but they liked to think otherwise. Anything to get them to screw their courage to the sticking place. And courage was always necessary when contemplating regicide. Could anyone kill King Capital? Mary doubted it, but if anyone could do it, it was surely these insiders, the people running the system. These 13 people were close enough to the royal body to get the knives in before anyone could stop them.
Es-tu brute?
Yes, Caesar, me too.
Dis.
Into the ash can of history. So now they nodded as they discussed things and translated Mary's proposals into more respectable policy formulations. They avoided any large conclusions that would make them aware of their temerity. Just numbers, juggling some numbers, and all for the sake of stability. And since this was partly true, she could let them get on with it, encourage them more. At the end of the meeting, the Chinese finance minister, Madame Chan, joined her at the west window, where the late sun was making the Farallons again look like a sea serpent's spine. What was that rising there in the west? These are just trims, she said to Mary with a smile. Buttoning up the coat you already made. Surely you don't mean to stop there? What do you have in mind? We've been looking at what India is doing. They're leading the way now in all kinds of things. They were radicalized, Mary said. Yes, and who wouldn't be? We don't want what happened to them to happen in China or anywhere else. So now they're teaching us regenerative agriculture, and we need it. But of course it keeps coming back to how we pay for these good things. I suppose, Mary groused. Chan smiled. Of course. Think of it as land reform. That's a financial arrangement too. So land taxes, which in China means a tenure tax. Creation of a commons for every necessity. Also, simply the legal requirement that private businesses be employee-owned. Mary shook her head skeptically as she listened, but she was smiling too, thinking that now the baton had passed to this woman. A woman with real power, huge power. We'll back you, she said happily. Take the lead, and we'll back you. And Madame Chan nodded, pleased with her. Afterward, Mary had been planning to fly home, but she canceled that and got her team to book a train sleeper and then a clipper ship, New York to Marseille. She worked all the way home. Chapter equals 85. Hi, I am here to tell you about Argentina's Shambhala permaculture project. We are representatives of Armenia's Arc Armenia, happy to be here. Down in Australia, we've connected up our Aboriginal wetland burning, shoal water culture, Gawala, greening Australia, how Aboriginals made Australia, Kachana land restoration, 1 acre small permaculture project, Permaculture Research Institute, Purple Pear Farm, rehydrating the landscape, Regenerate Australia, and the Yarra Biodiversity Corridor. We're a busy crowd. We are from Belize's coral reef restoration. I represent Bolivia's food security. Borneo's how to restore our rainforest. We are from Brazil's Centro de Experimentos Florestais, also restoration through agroforestry. We come to you from Burkina Faso's The Forest of Lalengo and the group reforesting with ancient African farming practices. Cameroon here, the Bafit Eco-Village. Canada's delegation represents Pejuanong traditional knowledge, Jardins d'Ambroisie, the Great Bear Rainforest, Miracle Farms, taking root and water for the future. China's delegation is happy to speak for a man plants a forest, eco-civilization, greening China's desert, Horkin Desert Reforestation, Karamay Ecological District, Kpuki Desert greening the Silk Road, Lus Plateau Watershed Restoration, transforming deserts to cropland, world's largest man-made forest, and Zhejiang Green Rural Revival Program. From the Congo, we are Bonobo Conservation, Participatory Mapping, and Virunga National Park. From Costa Rica, we are the Orange Peel Experiment, Punta Mona, and Vida Verde Water Retention. I am here to proudly speak for Cuba's Sustainable Agriculture Revolution on its 85th birthday. We are from Denmark's Vitsohus Permaculture. I have been sent to you by Ecuador's Cloud Forest Agroforestry. I from Egypt's Creating a Forest in the Desert. From England, we represent Agroforestry Research Trust, the Eden Project, NEP Estate Rewilding Britain, and River Restoration. From Eritrea, we are Manazar's Mango Regeneration. From Ethiopia, Ethiopia Rising, the Miracle of Marir, regreening Ethiopia's highlands, restoring ecosystems, and the Watershed Movement. For France, we happily represent Per Projet Agroforestry. From Guatemala, we are Reserva de Biosfera Maya and the Asociación de Comunidades Forestales. We speak for reforesting Haiti. From Holland, we represent the Land Life Company and Tiny Forest. Honduras sends you the roots of migration. The Hopi Nation is here with Hopi Raincatchers. Iceland sends you Afforesting Iceland and Regenerating Forests. From India, we come to tell you of agroforestry in Arau, Arvali Institute of Management, barren land into luscious forest, cooperative sustainable agriculture, creating a forest in a cold desert, crowd foresting, the farmer scientist, fishing cat conservancy, food sovereignty, foundation for ecological security, hand planting a 300-acre forest, mangrove restoration in the Sundarbans, Miracle Water Village, Miyawaki Afforestation Program, natural farming, Navdanya Biodiversity Farm, planting 50 million trees in one day, planting 66 million trees in 12 hours, protecting rice diversity, rejuvenated lakes in Bangalore, Sadhana Forest Sai Sanctuary, Seeds of Life, Sikkim the first organic state, water fields, water harvesting, and river restoration. Indonesia greets you with its Biorock Coral Reef Restoration, Mangrove Action Project, Mangrove Restoration, and Manta Reef Restoration Project. Israel present its growing forests in the desert and kibbutz. We are from Japan and bring news of creating forests to reduce tsunamis. I come from Jordan to tell you of greening the desert. We Kenyans are proud to represent East African Hydrologic Corridor, Green Belt Movement, Kaikipia Permaculture Center, Northern Rangelands Trust, and rainwater harvesting. Madagascar celebrates its great forest restoration by the example of Project Morena and using trees to save lives. Mexico presents greening the Chihuahuan Desert, intensive silvopasture, hidden rivers, reforestation and water protection group, and Via Organica. Morocco brings you its organization, Making the Desert Bloom. We come from Nepal to describe the Baol Project and the Anthropocene Wilderness Group. New Zealand here, Hindwai Reserve, Mangarara Eco Farm, and the Regenerators. As with all the other countries gathered here, tip of the iceberg really. I come from Niger to tell you of farmer-managed natural regeneration and regreening in Niger. From Norway, we speak of polar permaculture solutions. The Oglala Lakota Nation sends a representative from the Oglala Lakota culture, economic revitalization. We are from Panama's Mamoni Valley Preserve. Peru wants to tell you of its biocorridor Martin Sagrado. We from the Philippines have news of forest regeneration, national greening program, and saving a fishery and coral reef. We from Portugal celebrate the Fazenda Tamati permaculture, sown biodiverse pastures, Tamara water retention landscape, and wildlings. I am from Qatar's Sahara Forest Project. From Russia with Love, Pleistocene Park, wet carbon storage, and Siberian wildlife support. I am from Rwanda's Forests of Hope. We Scots are here for Britain's oldest forest, Dendregan Forest Restoration, Isle Martin Regeneration, on the deep wealth of this nation, and peat bog restoration. I speak to you for Senegal's Great Green Wall Initiative, also rolling back the desert. From South Africa, we speak about Ecoplanet Bamboo, Joe's Garden, making the desert bloom, and restoring the Bavianscliff. I am from the South Korean project Reforestation with 350+ million trees. I am from the Spanish project Camp Altiplano. I am from the Syrian project The Art of Regeneration. Please help us. I come from Tajikistan to tell you of reforesting Tajikistan. From Tanzania, we speak for reforesting Kokoda Island and reforesting Gom Surround. Tasmania here, we've got a great giant kelp restoration project, also restoring pine plantations. I am from Thailand to tell you about indigenous knowledge and forestry, planting mangroves, and Sahanan permaculture farm. Uganda sent me to speak of permagardens and Uganda's new forests. We come from the United States as representatives of Accelerating Appalachia, American Prairie Reserve, Broken Ground Permaculture, Food Forest Farm, Holistically Managed Bison, Homegrown Revolution, Institute of Permaculture, Kiss the Ground, Klamath River Basin Restoration, Lake Erie Bill of Rights, the Land Institute, the Leopold Institute, Los Angeles Green Regeneration, Mirroring Nature's Management, Permaculture for the People, Planetary Healing, Planting Justice Farms, Regenerative Ranching, Restoring the Colorado River, Restoring the Redwoods, Restoring the Snake River, Rodale Institute, Saving the West, the Sierra Club, Singing Frogs Farm, Soil Health Institute, Stewards of the Wild Sea, Tabula Rasa Farms, Tending the Wild, Weaving Earth, Wild Idea Buffalo Company, and Wild Oyster Project. I am from Zambia to tell you of the Better World Mine Regeneration. I am from Zimbabwe to speak for the Africa Center for Holistic Management and the Chikukwa Ecological Land Use Community Trust. We are all here together to share what we are doing, to see each other, and to tell you our stories. We are already out there working hard, everywhere around this earth. Healing the earth is our sacred work, our duty to the 7 generations. There are many more projects like ours already in existence. Look us up on your Yourlock account and see, maybe support us, maybe join us. You will find us out there already now. And then you must also realize we are only about 1% of all the projects out there doing good things. And more still are waiting to be born. Come in, talk to us. Listen to our stories. See where you can help. Build your own project. You will love it, as we do. There is no other world.